So when I was a kid, my my dad would be one that would love to cook dinner, or not dinner, I'm sorry, breakfast. His was more of the breakfast type, and he also loved to do scrambled eggs and bacon, and we all loved bacon. And this was about mid 60s or so. And one day I was in eating breakfast, grabbing a lot of bacon because I love bacon, and one of the bacon pieces got caught in my throat and it was choking. And I got up, but I didn't know what to do. And my dad come running over. Before he could do anything, he grabbed my feet and flipped me upside down and smacked me on the back. And the 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 piece of bacon flew out of my mouth. And that was before we ever learned about the Heimlich maneuver. We had dad's maneuver to be able to help extract food from our stomach. And it just, that was his resourcefulness to be able to grab and do that and get that out of it before I even got a chance to think about it. So that was good. So,
Hello, this is Gina
and this is Don.
with Focused Healthy Family. This is podcast number 151. And today we're talking about food foibles.
And I meant to grab there it is, my tip for the day.
Yes, what is the tip for the day?
Oh, that was a holiday one there. So this is going to be tip number 29 from Caregiver 101, the 101 ways keeping caregiving from making you crazy. And this,
By Mike Collins.
yeah, by Mike Collins. And today's tip is, if you get to the end of your rope, take a paper or a plastic bag and blow your troubles into it. Then pop the bag or make a list of all your troubles, tear up the paper and flush the pieces or throw them into the fireplace. Burn them in your grill. Write them down, put them behind a tire, and run over them. That's his tip for today.
I hadn't heard that one about running them over before.
That's a good one. I like that. But anyway, so today we're talking about food and foibles.
So swallowing, um, mishaps, issues with swallowing muscles.
Well, what kind of got me started on this is, of course, I get the AARP, which kind of hated that for a while. Didn't really want to get that right off the bat, but I do have it now, and it actually has some really good articles in it. And one of them talked about something, and I have a little bit of problem with this myself, but it talks about, well, it starts out talking about more than 5,500 people died from choking in 1922 was when this started.
1922.
What did I say?
I'm just repeating.
Oh, oh.
So 100 years ago.
And it's the third leading cause of death of what the National Safety Council calls unintentional injury death.
Was that 1922 or 2022?
2022.
Oh, you said 19.
Did I? Ah, got to keep up with his brain
So
here.
in 2022, how many people died from choking?
5,500 died from what they call unintentional injury deaths.
Oh, okay. So more than just choking.
Well, yeah, yeah, they talk about it, and this is, like I said, something I kind of fall into myself, and I have a little bit of problems with myself in swallowing, but they talk about, swallowing may seem easy and automatic, but in reality, it's a complicated process of moving food from the mouth all the way into the esophagus. Um, and it talks about, you know, we don't really realize that as you get older, things happen in your esophagus and in your throat that cause you problem. As it talks about getting many of the aspects of swallowing can deteriorate. Our saliva becomes drier, our teeth decay, and the muscles in chewing and swallowing get weaker. And that's talking about when you get into above 50 is what they're talking about. Um, and of course, then they go into the whole Heimlich maneuver, and 1974 when that came out.
What
But
year? What 1970
1974.
is when they Tell us about the person who invented the Heimlich
It
maneuver.
was, well, it was Henry Heimlich. And it was very obscure when it came about. Um, and it just talked about how to be able to release that from the front part of your lower part of your right around your chest.
Your sternum, just below
Yeah.
your, which is your chest bone. So if you feel your ribs come around you and you feel straight down to where there's a space.
Yeah.
So it's below the end of your sternum bone. So that's where you're going to put the pressure,
And you're basically putting uh one hand in front of the other and then
pushing in and up.
pushing in and up. Yep.
And after taking CPR life support classes, I've learned if you're choking and no one's around, you can lean yourself against a counter or a chair
That's a good idea.
and do the same thrust to yourself.
Well, and today, of course, of all days, uh, I am in cardiac rehab today, and it is our lesson learning day for how to learn. And they talked about CPR and doing hand only CPR. They they realized, I don't know what council they talked about now, that realized that uh, too many people get turned off by the fact of having to try to breathe into somebody's mouth, and they realize that hand only can be effective too. And so we learned how to put our hands on the chest, and they actually had dummies there that we could actually work with, and it was kind of fun. And I realized your hand and your ability to get me back into my life was a big play not very long ago, a couple months ago.
Keep that heart pumping and that heart.
Did you do hand only or did you do?
No, I gave you some breaths, but I knew I didn't give them very effectively. But
Oh,
but
yeah,
yeah,
with the,
they've since, I've learned CPR over the past 30 plus years. I've learned CPR over the past 30 plus years, and they've kind of modified it some, and where the chest compressions are, really important, and you actually start there before the breaths.
well, they talk about there's enough oxygen still in our body that just needs to be pumped around, and that's part of what the hand only.
And so that's if your heart is stopped. The Heimlich maneuver is if you have food lodged
Mhm.
in your throat, which can affect, it means you're not able to breathe, it's blocking your airway. So, and then there's a point where someone who's choking is going to pass out if the food does not get dislodged. And then you're going to need to do a mix of um, Heimlich maneuver and chest compressions to get them. Obviously, you can't get any air in though until the object that's lodged in there comes out. So,
Well, and I think they did talk about, just patting on the back doesn't really work. It can actually cause it to go further down. So it's better to work with like a
I'm
Heimlich
sure
kind
they
of thing.
wouldn't recommend picking someone up in a
Flipping them over.
because you could probably, gasp as that
Yeah,
happens, which
could lodge it in more. Yeah,
further, but
but
your father acted quickly.
did what he had to do, kind of
You
thing.
were little enough that he could pick you upside
Yeah, it
down.
was probably 7, 8, something like that.
So swallowing, talk about the issue you have done with swallowing.
Well, mine is just and it could be possibly me not chewing well enough. And they talk about that too, about making sure to chew your food up. But I get it stuck in here, and then I can't move it. And putting water down there makes it worse.
Yeah, I was going to say if someone's having trouble
You don't want to put it.
swallowing food down, you don't want to give them water. That's not going to help.
So, and it doesn't choke me. It doesn't cause me to lose
Just like it takes
breath.
an extra
But I
effort.
have to sit there and I do a little beating on my chest sometimes, but I don't think that really works. But it just takes some time for it to work its way down. And it can be very painful. Like I said, if by chance I swallow water right after it and it gets caught behind it, it becomes like unbearable sometimes.
Someone we were talking to talked about the cause of that. Um,
About the cause of,
what you're going through related to the esophagus and well, I'll have to look that up, but something to do with either reflux
oh,
or an issue with the esophagus. So just to go over some basic anatomy. um, so in the back of our mouth, our throat, there's an area where your trachea, which is your tube to your lungs, and your esophagus are right next to each other. In fact, there's a little flap. And when we're eating, it's supposed to cover the trachea so that we can swallow. That's why you say, don't um, talk with food in your mouth because you can't swallow and breathe air. And so that little flap has got to be working properly for that to happen. So, like you talked about muscles, we do have muscles in our throat and in our mouth. And so, whenever anyone's compromised with medical illness, different onset of different diseases, those muscles can get weak just like the rest of our body. And that can affect the ability to swallow properly for the epiglottis, that little flap. Um, um, to cover protect the trachea to protect your airway, and if it doesn't, I was getting a message from one of my employers, um, if it doesn't, then food can slip down, or liquids, anything can slip down into that trachea, which happens to us, and we cough, and sometimes a little bit of food comes up, or we expel it. We have the muscle strength to do that. So if we're getting eating some food too fast and talking, we'll find ourselves coughing, and that's good. We need to cough and expel that out. Because if you don't, those things shouldn't be going into your lungs.
well, that's kind of where you had to deal with your dad somewhat in that in the swallow and having to take and thicken liquids and stuff like that. Maybe you could talk just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have some different. So I just wanted to talk about aspiration. So what that is so a little bit of liquid can get down into your lungs. And for most healthy people, our body can handle that. It can handle a little bit of liquid, it can get absorbed. But when you have food particles and bacteria that are also going down in the lungs, um, that can lead to infection, which leads to pneumonia. That's what they mean by aspiration pneumonia. And different diseases can contribute to these challenges. Things like having a stroke, neurologic disorders, muscular dystrophy, dementia. There's other types of esophageal tumors and blockages. As well as medications like sedatives, anesthesia, impaired consciousness. This is why before you have surgery, before you're going to go under anesthesia, they don't want you to eat for a period of time because they don't want the chance of any food coming up and going into your lungs. So if someone's having this issue, if the they can diagnose obviously pneumonia with a chest X-ray and things, and they often do what's called a modified barium swallow test, where you're swallowing a liquid called barium that coats the esophagus and shows up on X-rays, so that when you're drinking, it can see is it slipping down into the trachea? Is food is are liquids things getting down there? And so if someone goes through issues with swallowing and a speech language pathologist assesses them, these are the kinds of things that they're looking at to determine, because obviously we don't want someone getting pneumonia. There are different causes of pneumonia. And again, this is what's called aspiration pneumonia, in case you've heard that term. And so, what can you do if this is happening? Someone's drinking water and it's getting down the wrong way. Well, one thing is thickened liquids. So, um, the reason being that the thicker liquids move more slowly. Think about eating pudding or even yogurt. It moves more slowly down the airway. So the airway, it moves more slowly so that it prevents it going into the airway. And so that's often what's recommended when someone is having issues with aspirating with liquids and things kind of spilling over into the trachea instead of all going into the esophagus. And so based on the specifics of someone's swallowing difficulty, they might be recommended different types of liquid. Um, there's different terminology that's used for it. They've recently changed it to mild and moderate and thick. You might hear the terms nectar thick, honey thick, and pudding thick. Pretty much if it's pudding thick, you're not able to drink liquids. Think how heavy pudding is, but nectar thick um, is trying to think of an example to give. A real thick smoothie almost.
No.
And again, it's so that the food so it goes down properly and is at less risk to aspirate the food. And there's so many different products out there now. And I was a young occupational therapist. I remember a speech therapist doing little educational ser in service with our coworkers, and she had the packets of thicket that we used to thicken liquids. And so at that time, it was this powder packet that you had to mix in, and you have to do it just right because if it gets too thick, then it becomes clumpy and really heavy. And it didn't taste the greatest. But now you can buy pre-thickened liquids. Frequently in hospitals and other settings, they'll have these single serving cup size of thickened liquids, and it comes in juices and iced tea and lemon flavored water. I know my mom found large bottles for my dad of thickened, so it was in like a
Orange juice and different teas and stuff like that.
yeah, and for my dad, I mean, for some people with issues with reflux and things, acidity, you don't really, orange juice can be a big
Yeah.
problem. But they even had thickened tea, and so you can buy these ahead of time. They're already pre-mixed. The other thing we found in the hospital, they had liquid packets for thickener, which were so much nicer than um, the powder, and it tell you exactly how many ounces of water to put it with, and you stirred it up real good. Those were really nice packets. So these things you can find on Amazon and anywhere you order things now. Um, but listening to a speech language pathologist, listening to them about the swallowing and the concerns, because someone's already compromised with other health issues, this is the last thing you want is adding this challenge, the risk of aspiration pneumonia. And there can also be other strategies that are used to help with swallowing. So, our positioning, it's like when someone's laying flat in bed, you never want to give them their pills that way. You really need to be up at 90 degrees. So, your head over your hips. So ideally being out of bed, sitting in a chair is a better alignment.
Mouth up too, does that help or none?
Mouth up.
Well, just being able to,
No, it
no,
needs
needs to be down.
mouth up. Have you ever tried to swallow like that, Don? Actually, often tucking your chin helps it to
Yeah,
swallow better.
okay.
But sitting upright. So if you're in bed, elevating it all the way, even putting a pillow behind your back, the more upright, because think about when you're crunched down like this, everything's all
Compact.
compacted and the muscles can't do what they're designed to do and it's not in the best alignment. So thinking about someone's position, you also have issues with food and different consistencies of food, choking on bacon. It's a hard
Mm.
food that if you don't chew up well and with people aging population, you often have people with maybe don't have all their teeth and have difficulty chewing different things and might need food that's easier to chew. So thinking like ground meats or, chopped up
Mm.
chicken or turkey, that's easier to chew. And then someone who has a really difficult time, they puree the food. So pretty much taking the food and putting it in the blender. Um,
It's not the most pleasant thing to look at, but
um, and it's all in the name, of safety, you got to get enough nutrition. And then there's the quality of life aspect of things. You know,
Mm.
when someone, if they're at the end of their life, we have waivers people sign, they decide, you know what, I don't know how much time I have left. I have a lot going on. I want to be able to drink water. One thing, my dad, we learned is a water protocol that he could use. He was on thickened liquids. And the speech therapist explained this to me, about the bacteria and stuff in the mouth, that if you swallow a little bit of water, most of us can deal with that. But if you've got bacteria and other food particles that are going down with the water, and so an hour after meals, he could thoroughly brush his teeth, clean it out really good so there's nothing left. And then he could take some slow sips of regular clear water, just regular consistency water and water only, to have just regular water that's not thickened. Um, and I've seen it as the free water protocol, the Fraser water protocol. Um, and so we did that with my dad for him to be able to have regular water. He didn't mind, especially if it was sweetened. The thickened water, a lot of people, they just want ice cold water. They just want to be able to drink regular water, and it can be very frustrating. So talking to the professionals that are working with your loved one, finding out if this is a possibility for them, something that they can do. And again, looking at quality of life, where they're at in life. Most of us, grow up with food being a source of celebration and taking pleasure in eating and enjoying different foods. And when we can't do that, when we're restricted from what we can eat, that affects the quality of our life. And so finding ways to maximize that, like, having the pre-thickened liquids that are easier taste wise, if it's sweetened a little bit, it has lemon in it, or it's iced tea flavored or apple juice flavored, that can make it more palpable. Um, and so thinking about swallowing and eating and enjoying foods and remembering, the quality of life factor, and talking with your doctor, talking with your therapist, especially your speech language pathologists, about their situation. I've learned so much more about the specifics of it. There's just a whole lot to it, and different types of issues that you can have with swallowing, and the muscles that are involved in that. And it's different in different people. So
Well, and
understanding
you
that.
just to, just to kind of wrap it up, but is there? I don't know if this is a good question, but is there ways of looking at symptoms of it? You know,
Oh, did sign?
keeping an
Yes,
eye on.
definitely. Signs for aspiration. If someone is coughing when they're eating, that's a big sign, and there can be what's called silent aspiration, where they don't have signs, but yet it's still happening. And that can be, overlooked. People think, oh, I'm not coughing when I'm eating, I'm fine, but it's slipping down into the
Mm,
trachea anyhow. But yes, someone's coughing, their nose is running, when they're eating or drinking.
mm,
Those are big signs of things. I know for people who have difficulty swallowing pills, there's a number of procedures that they take, that giving it to them with applesauce or pudding, and then sometimes pills being crushed, although there are certain medications that cannot be crushed that need to be taken whole.
mm.
And so there's different measures. But yes, so paying attention to when someone's eating.
So this was our podcast for today. Talk about food phobias. Now I'm going to say
Foibles.
foibles. There
I
you go.
use that just for the alliteration, but
Yeah, no, it's a
just faulty measures in our body's functioning when it comes to swallowing, and things we can look out for, like you said, signs to watch for.
well. And as you get older, think about that. It may not just be a simple fact of what that you choked on something. It could be there could be some things going on for you that you might want to keep in mind as far as what's going on with the throat. But we hope you and
I just wanted to
oh,
summarize some more symptoms of aspirating: coughing, gagging or choking, difficulty breathing, hearing wheezing or rattling sounds, hoarseness, drooling as well as vomiting can be signs that someone is has been aspirating, and it later signs after the fact can be that they get a fever, they get chest pain, shortness of breath, things like they get pneumonia or having reoccurrent lung infections. And so there, that gives you just a little bit more pointers on kind of what to look out for and who to go to and to get more information. And so
Well, we hope that you enjoyed our little uh, food phobia there. And if you could, wherever you might be listening to this, whether it's on our side or on one of the podcasts, make sure to leave us a comment on other ideas that you'd like to hear about. Please subscribe to us. Um,
you
you
can
know,
find us on YouTube as well as anywhere you listen to a podcast, but you can also see us on YouTube.
you can find out about Gina and I, how we do uh, um, our consults with people, helping them through their journey through the senior years. Um, and you can find all of that on our podcast, www.focushealthyfamily.com. You can find us on Facebook at Facebook Focus Healthy Family, Instagram at Focus Healthy Family 1, and at YouTube at Focus Healthy Family. You can join us each Thursday for our podcast. You can join me for my monthly EFT tapping sessions. The next one comes up February 11th at 7 p.m., where we do some tapping, and it's a free uh, it's a free session, and it allows you to kind of help reduce some of the stresses and strains that we go through every day. Um, and uh,
Ask the OT.
Yeah, we have to put some of those
We
back
yeah,
up.
we've been doing some Ask the OT, and you can look on the website to find previous episodes where we invite people to come on to ask some different questions about caring for an aging loved one or the whole aspect of juggling caring for your family and yourself and managing that.
And so remember this, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.